I feel this energy shooting up my spine, and I think, oh wow, amazing. And then what happens is my eyes that I'm looking out of my human eyes, instead of seeing the room as just the normal room before me, I see it through the slits of the snake eyes. I don't know how it happened, but somewhere along the line I started doing seances and I started seeing ghosts. Then at night I would have experiences of demons showing up in my bedroom. Yeah, so when I come back to England, I get offered a job, a paid job, doing some mediumship. And so I pick up my phone and I start typing in the passcode to, pick up the calls and do the readings. And as I do that, I close my eyes. Jesus Christ shows up in my bedroom. Hello everybody, my name's Leonie. I'm from Surrey in South England, and this is my testimony from the New Age into Jesus and Christianity. I did grow up going to church. I went to Christian schools, everything like that, but intertwined with this strand of Christianity in my childhood, there was also this strand of witchcraft. So I remember a time as a child when I remember feeling God around me the way I felt the air, like it was just this presence that kind of hugged me and held me all of the time. I have some little letters I wrote as a child where I would write like love letters to God saying, please, like, can I be a Christian? And I would draw fish all over them. But then, I don't know how it happened, but somewhere along the line, I started doing seances. So when I was 5 or 6 years old, I made friends with a girl down the road who was really interested in this kind of thing. And I was too. So I remember we would sit around in a little circle, just the two of us, with my grandfather's war medals. And we would try to summon ghosts. And this was our favorite game. And we would go out in the garden and we would play with the ghosts. Like we would pretend we were playing invisible football with all the ghosts, and we would throw the ball and imagine the ghost caught it and sent it back to us, and all sorts of stuff like this. And I think somewhere along the line I suffered some trauma, but also this kind of witchcraft and these seances I was doing, I believe they opened a door to something, and I started seeing ghosts, real ghosts all of the time, everywhere. I would see my grandmother, my grandfather walking around the house. I would speak to them. And then at night, I would have experiences of demons showing up in my bedroom every single night of my life for years and years and years. And I used to have a bunk bed as a child that I would just sleep on the top bunk of. And I remember it's like every day I would almost suppress the memory of the fear I felt at night so that I could get through the day. But then at nighttime, as soon as I laid down and my head hit the pillow, the memories that I suppressed would come back, and I would start panicking and sweating, and I would close my eyes because I knew that if I opened them, I would see these demons in my room. I would see things fly off shelves, I would hear footsteps, I would be poked, I would be grabbed. And I used to also draw pictures of these demons, so maybe I can find one of them. But they were very like tall, very, very skeleton thin beings with like pitch dark skin. And they would just kind of walk around and then eventually go. But this caused me so much trauma. And the way I kind of got through it was by reasoning with myself that maybe I was crazy and it was all in my head or all a nightmare. Then I grew up a little bit and maybe the internet became more of a thing. So I was able to do a bit of researching and I started learning about mediumship and witches, and I would watch Long Island Medium back to back, almost like I was researching and trying to understand my life. And I learned that there were people out there like me who grew up, needing a nightlight no matter how old they are, being afraid to go to bed because they saw these things. And the realization that these things they saw and felt were real was so liberating for me, because it meant not only was I not crazy, but that there was a reality beyond the world that I lived in, which, even though the experience I had of that reality was quite dark, it meant that there was a spiritual realm, and I find comfort in that. So I start doing, this is probably when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I start doing tarot cards, crystals, sage, cleansing the space. I have these beautiful spiritual mentors I go to who I still have so much love for, because they are truly kind, wonderful women who did help me. I believe that maybe what they're teaching isn't truth, but I still, I look back with so much love and respect, and they helped me to take on this empowering perspective that, or maybe I'm blessed with the gift of mediumship or the gift of being a witch, and this is why I see these things. And actually, maybe the stuff that shows up in my bedroom isn't evil. Maybe it's just dead loved ones or spirits that I need to talk to and help them to move on. So I did have experiences for a while when I was working with this one woman who was mentoring me when I started. Like, if I saw a ghost in my room, not a demon, I would talk to it and then kind of help it move on. And multiple times I would do this, I would literally see these orbs next to my bed, like these purple orbs, and they would move up to the sky, and I would feel a relief in my heart. So that to me made me think, oh, it's working. And then somewhere along the line, people do start coming to me for mediumship readings. I never charge them anything. I just do them for free, but they're always startlingly accurate. So this is going on in my life, but all the while I am still searching for God. And I don't really know what God means or what God is, but in times of desperation, I will use that word and I will talk to the air and hope that somebody hears it, because I suppose a deeper part of my soul knew that they did. And so in my searching to heal from anxiety, I start going to yoga. I find a lot of solace in the yoga studio when I'm living in London, because it's just so chaotic there. And that was a time of massive upheaval in my life when I was studying in London. And I stumble across something called Kundalini yoga. Now, this is one of the lesser known styles of yoga, I think, because it's protected in a way, or it's more clandestine or less popular. But I remember when I saw the word Kundalini written down, I think it was on a website for my yoga studio, I just had this like spiritual magnetism towards it. So I go down and I do a Kundalini yoga class. And the Kundalini yoga class, it's very different to like a hatha or an ashtanga, because there's a lot more focus on the breath and the mantra, and you get yourself into quite a deep trance state very quickly because you're almost hyperventilating. And so in this first class, I have a spiritual experience, and I believe that I need to teach Kundalini yoga. So after about 4 classes, I find myself in yoga teacher training to be initiated into Kundalini yoga. And I experience a lot of high highs in this training. I'm just checking if the light beam's there. It's okay. Feelings of complete love and so much energy, feelings that I want to just run around the whole world and hug everyone, visions of all these things, visions of serpents and pyramids. But then towards the end of the training, after I've been doing my sadhana for a while, that's a daily practice where you wake up at 4 a.m., have a cold shower, and then do yoga for about 2 or sometimes 3 hours. So it's very intensive. And I was very, very deep in the practice. It was my whole life. I started experiencing what I thought was a Kundalini awakening. So the principle with the Kundalini is that, in all yoga systems, you have the chakra system that goes up the spine. The Kundalini is the idea that intertwined with these chakras, we have 2 serpents called the Ida and Pingala, and these kind of weave in and out of one another. And the goal of the Kundalini yoga is to get the serpent to rise all the way up your spine. And when it reaches your crown, you're enlightened. And I thought, oh, that's great. I want to be enlightened. I'll just do loads of this. You can kind of see this if you're interested in history all the pharaohs in Egypt, they have the serpent coming out of their forehead. That's to show that their Kundalini is awakened, and supposedly they're very enlightened and very aware spiritual beings. So I have an experience one day in the class that I feel this energy shooting up my spine, and I think, oh wow, amazing. And then what happens is my eyes that I'm looking out of my human eyes, instead of seeing the room as just the normal room before me, I see it through the slits of the snake eyes. Kind of like, snakes have eyes like cat's eyes. They have the slit instead of the hole of the pupil that we do. And when I'm sticking out my tongue to do some of the deeper breath, I can see and feel that my tongue is like a snake's tongue. It just flows all the way out. And yeah, I don't remember what I thought at the time. I think I just thought, oh, I'm, must be having something magical happen to me. And that's quite cool. The Kundalini actually is a snake and everything they're saying is real. But then after that class, what happens is I start getting spontaneous body movements. So I start getting my head would lift up and down like this, but very, very jerky and very fast, sometimes multiple times in a row. It looked like I had Tourette's, and it felt like I had Tourette's because I couldn't control it. But some deeper part of my spiritual discernment knew this was not Tourette's. It knew it was the Kundalini serpent. And so I carried on with the training and the initiation. But then what happened after that is when I would get down on my mat to do this type of yoga, the spontaneous body movements would become larger. Almost like the Kundalini energy was moving me through the practice, moving my body through the practice, instead of my mind consciously putting myself in certain postures to stretch or feel good or whatever. And I go to my teachers about this, and they don't really have any answers for me. They've never seen it before. So I start researching. And apparently there are people who go through these Kundalini awakenings and they start experiencing all sorts of things, all sorts of spontaneous body movements, usually with the spine and the neck, all sorts of mental health issues, visions, hallucinations. And I end up meeting a girl my age who's also going through this Kundalini stuff, whatever it is. And her Kundalini movements, they were similar to mine in the sense that they moved her spine spontaneously, but they were more aggressive. So I remember this woman who I will always have so much love and respect for because she went through so much, saying that she was afraid to get another job because she thought the Kundalini might just like slap out her arm and get her to hurt somebody. And this all sounds so bizarre unless you've been there, but I remember her having like spontaneous screams come out of her body. And she explained to me that she felt it was like a very angry scream, almost like a grunting, like territorial thing. And that's what I witnessed too when I heard this. And she introduced me to a world of people who also had these things going on with them, and that there are some like secret Kundalini centers that people go to when they need help with this type of thing. But obviously it's not advertised because it just seems so bizarre to the average person. You just think, oh, you've got Tourette's, it's a mental health thing. But I knew it wasn't. I knew in my soul. So yeah, fast forward, I don't get resolution from any of that, but when I stopped practicing the Kundalini and I stopped practicing yoga, it tones down, and the spontaneous movements, they stop happening, but I could still feel it was kind of locked in my body, and maybe I was fighting it in a way. I know this sounds strange, but yeah, that was the time of my life I had so much darkness, the worst depression you can ever imagine. It was like the only way I could get these highs of happiness and love was doing the yoga. And when I didn't, I would just fall down so deeply. So I continued journeying in the New Age after that, doing all sorts of mind healing, energy healing, crystal healing, trying to search for something. I don't carry on doing yoga, but I find myself more in goddess worship and manifestation, which there's so much to say there because I think it's a really interesting realm. And I feel that maybe if somebody's grown up in the Christian faith, they'll look at these deceptions and think they just make no sense and they're so bizarre. But the important thing that I want to teach Christians and the church is that if you've grown up your whole life without God, even though I had a little bit of God as a child, I didn't fully know him. When you stumble across the deception, you're not actually stumbling into what feels like a deception. You're stumbling into 9 strands of a lie braided around one single strand of truth. And that single strand of truth, if you've never felt it before, is the best thing you've ever felt in your entire life, because it's showing you that there's more than this 3D world of just getting up and going to work and going through the motions and then dying and who knows what. It's showing you there's something else. And that's everything that humans crave, because we are made to know God and love God, and we are seeking that. Okay? And I think something I say to my friends at church now is that I don't want them to think it's like, oh, I was in the Kundalini and the New Age and the magic and the witchcraft, and then I found Christianity as a new thing. What happened was I began my life wanting to know God. So I started like at the top of the ocean, and I found Buddhist meditation, so I went deeper. And then I found mediumship and I went deeper. Then I found New Age and I went deeper. Then I found Kundalini and I got possessed and I was like, oh, okay, demons must be real, and I go deeper. Okay? So it's like I've got my little shovel and I'm just digging. And then at the bottom of the ocean, I meet God and I meet Jesus. Okay, so the people in the New Age and the people in witchcraft and in yoga, they're not actually at the end of the board not knowing God. They're right next door. They're knocking on the door, wanting to know him so desperately. And they are fertile soil to receive the message of the gospel, because they're clinging to these false gospels because they are all they have. Okay, so I fell into goddess worship and I did all the, the Mother Earth stuff and the offerings and the paganism and the manifestation, and it worked. I was able to manifest what I wanted, and that felt great. It felt like I wasn't alone in my reality anymore. But there was also this emptiness there because I didn't have a relationship to God. I was still seeking. Okay, so after a while, I lived in Bali for a bit, really pursuing the yoga and the New Age and learning all of these things. And I end up manifesting what I think is the life of my dreams. I end up manifesting a man who says he loves me more than anything. I end up manifesting a multiple £1 million house that I can use as a retreat center, that I did up and renovated to be like a yoga retreat center, because I wanted to help people heal, and I believe that could help them heal. And I manifested the family. I thought I always wanted everything, right? Everything young women really want and try to manifest, but I felt so empty and so alone and frankly really depressed. So this was maybe 18 months ago now. I fast forwarded a bit. I was walking in the backfield behind our house that is so beautiful in the summer. It has all these blue thistles and foxgloves and butterflies, and I would always walk around there barefoot and speak out loud, and I would use the word God sometimes. Other times I would pray to the Mary Magdalene or someone else, whoever. I thought, I just want it to go somewhere. I don't know who's listening, but I'll just throw out some names and maybe you'll hear me and help me. And I would say, God, thank you for this life. Thank you for what you've given me. Thank you for this home. But if it is not for me, please take it all away. And I would pray that prayer multiple times until eventually one day in October, I wake up and every single thing in my life is taken away from me. I lose my partner at the time, my fiance, my house, my business, my money, everything, all in one day. And that really was so hard. I literally felt like I was dying, or like I did die, because everything I had that I thought made me safe was gone. And well, the irony is that my prayer was answered, but I ended up praying a lot more after that, because I suppose I knew that there was an answered prayer in it, but I was fighting it. So I remember I would wake up early every single morning. I would light my candle and I would pray. And when I say pray, I mean I would sit there or lie there and shout, "Why, God, why?" Because I was in so much pain. And I didn't know if anyone heard me. I think I probably told God that I hated him and all these awful things. But there was a relationship building in that pain I was in. And after losing everything, after losing my business, I ended up just going and working at like a local restaurant bistro as a bartender. And just going through the motions, working 7-day weeks, trying to distract myself from the pain, praying sometimes. And then one night I'm closing up the bar and these two angels walk in. And these angels' names are Martin and Wendy. They're not really angels, they're just people, but they came in and just started asking me about my life. I think they could see something in my eyes, and the whole place was empty at that point. I was alone, and they asked if they could pray for me. So they shut their eyes and they prayed over every single aspect of my life, and I felt so strange and awkward. I didn't know how to stand or what to do with my eyes or my hands or my arms. But I really felt in their prayer that God was calling me home, and they apologized for all the pain I felt and how lost I was. And after that happened, when they walked out, I walked behind the bar that I was meant to be cleaning and just sobbed, because I just felt they really cared for me, and that was really special. And that's why I will always remember their names, even though I, spoke to so many people doing that job. So after a while, I feel called to go to Australia, because I need to just get away and clear my head and process my grief. In Australia, for some reason, I continue trying to do the goddess worship, because someone I love sends me all the stuff about Lilith, that actually she's really empowering and wonderful and she can help me. But I remember I would walk around Australia and I would walk outside, and the earth was this beautiful, like rich terracotta red. And I had this feeling when I was walking on the top of the earth, after praying to the goddess and listening to this music, that I was buried so deeply underneath the earth. I really remember feeling that I was going through a death of sorts, like I almost viscerally felt that I was under the earth. And that's an awkward thing to try and put into words. But in hindsight, I believe that was a part of my rebirth going on. I was buried. Everything in my life was buried, and I had to put it all away into the earth in order to move forward. After a month in Australia, I go to Bali, where I used to live, my home, and I decide to go into silence and do a water fast. Fasting has always been a very important part of my journey, and so I go into silence. I fast from technology, books, music. I don't talk to anyone. I literally sit and drink water by myself in this hut for 12 days. And when you're fasting and doing nothing, 12 days can feel like months, because there's so much spaciousness for things to happen. I've spent hours just sitting and watching the ants crawl from one side of a table to another, sitting in the rain, watching the sky, all of these things. And in that time, I was really fasting to heal my broken heart, and also heal this feeling of brokenness that I carried inside of me, I suppose from some trauma in the past. And I'm delving into goddess worship again. I'm sitting and chanting for hours and hours because it calms me, and maybe there's something there. but I'm still not quite scratching that itch of somethingness that I don't know what it is. And so I climb up the days and progressively become weaker and weaker and emptier and emptier. And when you're fasting and meditating so much, it's like your thoughts just start to dissolve one by one, and you're left with this presence within you. And I think that presence is almost like the most powerful spiritual dial for truth, because you become so sensitive. It's like you're a wind chime, and if truth blows through you, you'll feel it ring inside of you. And so on day 12 of my water fast, I've become very weak, and I'm in a lot of physical pain. That can sometimes happen with fasting when you're going very deep, and there's a storm, a massive storm in the valley that I'm in, so big that my friend Elu, who lived a few huts up, her hut completely blew away in the wind. Trees were bending over sideways. It was roaring. It was so loud. And my bathroom was just kind of open to the elements. And I remember sitting on the floor in so much pain, and I cry out to all these false gods, and nothing happens. And then finally, I sink to the bottom of the ocean emotionally. I cry out to God, to the one God. I use the word God, and I mean the one God in my heart and soul, because I feel that. And I say, God, take me. I don't care anymore. If you're going to kill me, do it. If you're going to blow my heart away, do it. If I'll never be happy again, do it. Whatever you want, I don't care. I don't care if I'm going to live. I don't care if you're going to save me. Whatever you're going to do, just do it. And this is all screamed out into the storm. But in that moment, it's like this penny dropped inside of me, and I literally felt it in my chest, this surrender that I had never done before in my life, because I was always fighting against something. I surrendered to God for the first time. And in the months after that, when I returned to England, something was different. I went through my life feeling that I had let go of something because I had given up. And I suppose that was the feeling of becoming like a child of God and handing over responsibility. So I start praying to the one God even more, and start just asking for discernment on all of these things. I start asking, should I stop doing the mediumship readings? Should I do this? Should I do that? And yeah, so when I come back to England, I get offered a paid job doing some mediumship. And I took it. But before the first day of the job, I remember praying and asking for discernment, asking for a sign, because I didn't know if it was good or bad. And ever since I surrendered to God, I started getting these feelings of like being magnetized to do something different to what I was doing before. And I remember being so annoyed because the first day I was meant to start the job, I sit there before picking up the phone and doing the readings, and I think, well, he didn't give me a sign. What have I been doing? It's just another spiritual roundabout. And so I pick up my phone and I start typing in the passcode to, pick up the calls and do the readings. And as I do that, I close my eyes. And so I have my phone in my hand like this. Jesus Christ shows up in my bedroom, and he touches my hand that has the phone in like this. And I put the phone down, and I have more conviction than I've ever had in my life that he is God, that he is my savior, that I will never touch mediumship ever again. I didn't show up for that first day of work. And yeah, I suppose it's a hazy memory to describe, because the most memorable part of it was not what I saw in my vision of him, but it was the feeling I felt in my heart. And that feeling was a feeling of, I suppose, being a prodigal, I can't say that word, of being like a lost child and wanting to run home and just feeling so weary and tired and just wanting to throw everything down at his feet and just cry with this pain of confusion and being so deceived for so long. So that happens. And it's something that's kind of hard to process because it's so outside of normal life. I don't really tell anyone about it. But I start watching all these Christian podcasts and praying and even reading the Bible. And then one night, I suppose a month after, I just feel so much conviction on my heart. And that feeling of wanting to just give up, but give everything over is still there. So I just surrender completely. And I give my life to him on the floor of my bedroom. And I do it in the sense that I'm not giving him a gift to get a gift back. I'm giving from a place of being completely exhausted, mentally, spiritually, and physically, completely at the end of myself. I say, God, I will give you everything. If you want to save me and help me, fine. But I'm just giving it to you. I just give my life to you. I'm yours. And I meant it. And in that moment when I did it, I felt the Holy Spirit coming upon me. And it felt like this cold wind just like moved into my chest, like so quickly, like, and I didn't think much of it. I thought, oh, maybe I'm just a bit cold or something because I'm such a skeptic. But then I remember in the 2 weeks following, I felt more peace than I've ever felt in my entire life. And I am somebody who's spent tens of thousands of pounds on yoga and meditation. I've traveled the world to sit with gurus, and the Holy Spirit gave me more than all of that. There's this feeling that I'm like in this river and it's moving and it's going to take me somewhere. And I don't know where it's going to take me, but I need to keep doing the steps to keep going with this process and this feeling of peace that he's given me. So I quickly start throwing everything away. I throw thousands of pounds worth of crystals into a lake. I throw away all my books, everything. And then one day I learn what deliverance ministry is. And it scares me at first, but I keep researching it because I suppose, we're also brainwashed by watching The Exorcist and The Conjuring and all these movies that show you that if you go through deliverance, your head's going to spin round and you'll be a bit crazy. But I get convicted that I need deliverance from my past because I can feel that I'm carrying something. So I pray for someone to come into my life who can help me with deliverance. And then I think it's like a day or 2 days later, I find a man called Brian online, and he does deliverance over in the States. This man's helped me so much. So I hop on a Zoom call with him, and I'm sitting there so nervous. I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like, I'm scared something bad's going to happen. And, a few years ago, I would get out all my sage and crystals and like hug them to keep me safe. And so I think, okay, I'll sit here and I'll read my Bible and that will keep me safe and stop my head spinning around. So I tell him my story. I tell him about the Kundalini, about the crystals, about the mediumship, anything that comes to mind. And he reads out a prayer that he needs me to repeat to renounce the Kundalini spirit of myself, because he could understand that actually this serpent spirit that we're talking about in Kundalini yoga, and I have this conviction too now, is actually the same serpent spirit in the Garden of Eden. It's the same deceiver. And this is why young women are being targeted most with the yoga and the meditation and all of these things, because they're an easy target, right? So he guides me through a prayer, and I need to say, okay, I renounce the spirit of Kundalini in the name of Jesus. And I'm like, okay, something going to happen? Is my head going to spin around? Nothing happens. And then he moves on and prays to somebody else because there was another person on the call too. And so I'm watching the Zoom and he starts praying for another man. And then all of a sudden I start feeling weird, like really weird. I start feeling like I'm going to faint. Like right now, I remember my eyes darting around the room thinking, okay, like where's my phone? Should I call someone? Do I call an ambulance? What do I do if I think I'm about to faint? I could feel that like the edges of my vision were going dark and my lights were about to go out. I felt that it was going to happen. And I remember trying to speak to Brian and say, well, wait, something's happening, but I couldn't move my lips. And then I get this feeling of acid moving up my esophagus, almost like I'm going to spit something out, but nothing happens in that way. It's the most intense, awful feeling of like burning, like I'm dying, like I'm going to faint, like I'm going to spit something out, like my body's going to start jerking uncontrollably. And then somehow I find the strength to move my arm and take a sip of water, and it all goes away. And I suppose that was deliverance. I went back to him and said, oh, I feel like, is it done? Was something still there? And I got the validation that was my deliverance and that was the spirit leaving me. But it was really fighting on its way out. And in hindsight, when I look back, I think that the feeling that I was going to faint was actually the feeling that something was trying to push me or pull me out of my own body. And I had this like adrenaline to fight and stay in it. And so it left. So that's the first of my deliverance experiences. That night after the call, I think it's almost like I declared to the Kundalini, to the serpent, to the spirit world that I am not walking the path I was once walking. I'm not just inviting Christ in, I'm actually letting other things go. I didn't sleep a wink that night because I saw so many demons in my room that literally looked like Dementors from Harry Potter all around my bed. And I don't know if the bed was shaking or if my body was shaking, but something was going on. We had the biggest thunderstorm I've ever seen in my life in England. That night, it was literally above my house. The room would light up to daylight when the lightning struck. And I was staying somewhere else at the time. I had an ensuite bathroom. There were no windows open, but the bathroom door kept going and slamming loud. And I got up multiple times to be like, okay, checking the hinges, trying to figure out what was going on. But I really have the conviction that it was like a spiritual battle going on, and they were trying to scare me senseless. And it worked. Because I was scared enough to start going to church the next morning, which was a Sunday. So I get up after having all these weird things going on, after having no sleep, after seeing stuff that most people would not even believe me if I tried to describe, and I decide I'm going to church. When I stand up, I step on a hornet, and it makes it so I can't really walk for about an hour, and then by the time I get to church, I still can't walk without limping. And, there was a part of me that didn't believe in spiritual warfare before that day, but now I really believe in it. I mean, because I don't believe in coincidences. So that was definitely a fight. What other stories can I tell? Yeah, so another deliverance story is that I said that I threw away all my crystals, which I did, but I decided to keep one because I'm very sentimental. And this is a crystal my mother bought me when I was probably 7 years old. We would go to the occult shop together, and it was my favorite place. And she bought me this rose quartz that I carried in my pocket almost every single day of my life. And I was talking to Brian, and I told him that I got rid of all my crystals, kind of celebrating. And he says, is there one left? And I'm like, yeah. How did you know that? There's still one left. He said, that's the one you need to get rid of. That's the one there's a demon living inside of. And at this point, I believe everything. I'm like, okay, picking up the crystal, shaking it, like, hello, is anyone in there? And he says, you need to smash it. So I take this small crystal, it's about that big, outside in my garden, and I smash it. And when I smash it, I did this on a video call, so there must be some evidence out there somewhere. It glows bright red and slides across the floor. And I thought nothing of it because I'd never smashed a crystal before. I thought, oh, maybe this is just like chemical reaction or something. But in hindsight, I think there really was something going on there. And when I smashed it completely, I felt something leave my chest. I felt lighter afterwards. I really feel different now that that is gone, whatever that is. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that experience. But all the while, when I was going through deliverance, I believe, and this still does happen sometimes because I'm in the run up to my baptism right now, and sometimes things can get a bit intense before that happens. I would get a lot of sleep paralysis with visions and dreams. And sleep paralysis, if anyone doesn't know, it's kind of like you have very vivid nightmares or visions that you're being held down and tormented. I remember having sleep paralysis visions every single night that were very consistent, where I would be taken to the same place over and over again, like this hotel in Brighton. I was taken there by the demons, and I would recall them trying to do like reverse deliverance on me, trying to deliver me from the light within me and the Christ within me. And yeah, this would wake me up multiple times a night, like breathing and panting and being so scared. And the only way I could make that stop happening would be to read my Bible. If I stopped and I woke up in the night and I read my Bible, it wouldn't happen again for the rest of the night. And that started to teach me that actually this is a stronger protection than anything else I've done before. Because I used to get this previously, the sage, the crystals, nothing ever worked. Crying out to the false gods and the goddesses never ever worked. But crying out the name of Jesus, pleading the blood of the Lamb, reading the Bible and praying worked. Okay? So think about that. If you're being attacked by a demon, if you're in sleep paralysis, if you're struggling, and you say the name Jesus Christ, and that thing flees from you, and it will, I've experienced this hundreds of times, then that's evidence for God, right? Okay, if demons know the name of Jesus Christ and they're afraid of it, then that's because it's real. So I start reading the Bible every single night. And when I do that, I don't get tormented and I don't get attacked. And this is where I am now. And I'm due to be baptized on the 10th. And I'm changing my business. So it was previously a health business with some new age meditation principles thrown into a Christian ministry where I will help people to heal their bodies through fasting and prayer, because fasting has helped me so much in life to heal myself physically and also to find God. And I believe it's an ancient practice that we really need to bring back, because a lot of Christians, they haven't had that conviction to fast yet. But actually, I believe it's really essential. If you fast long enough, you will meet Jesus, because you're putting in the work and you're clearing out your mind enough and all these blocks that you have against meeting him.
We have some exciting news. We are looking to help people who want to get into YouTube or even just social media in general. If you feel like God's calling you, to start a ministry, to preach online, but you just don't know how to start, or you're nervous and you want someone to walk you through it and help you, we can help you with that. So there's going to be a link below to the website if you want to go check it out. I look forward to hopefully working with you. So yeah, God bless.